Hey everyone, my name is Robert Breedlove, and I'm here today to talk to you about the relationship between Bitcoin and human rights. And I'm going to be approaching this topic today through the lens of my personal philosophy, which I call freedom maximalism. And this philosophy is kind of a hybrid of libertarianism, uh, anarcho-capitalism, and possibly even agorism. And essentially, it's just focused on maximizing the freedom of the individual, the past, present, and future. We'll get into kind of the different aspects of that as we go here. So the gist of it is that freedom maximalism is rooted in an inarguable reality. And this is the reality that each person owns themselves. So to talk about individual self-ownership and how it is provable through action, it's very simple. If I try right now in this moment to move your left arm, nothing happens. However, if you try to move your left arm, action happens, right? Your arm moves. So there are no arguments, there are no policies, there are no regulations that can change this. I own me, you own you, and each and every person in the world owns themselves. It is inarguable. There's nothing that could be said to change it. And this is something that's so fundamental that you can't even trade it away if you wanted to, right? If you wanted to trade yourself, say, sell yourself into a slave contract, you can never uninstall your free will or your consciousness and give it to someone else. It's always with you, right? Your self-ownership is always integral to your mind. And at any point, even if you decided to sell yourself into a slave contract, at any point you decided that that contract was no longer relevant, it would immediately be null and void. So this is what economists call an inalienable property right. This is the most fundamental property right that everyone possesses, is that they own themselves. And this is a very key point. So your willpower is yours and yours alone. To try to deny that in any way is an act of self-deception. So to put it simply, no one in the world can hold a higher claim on one's life than oneself. We are all self-owned. Okay, so I want to drill in a little bit to the actual individual itself. What is the individual? I think what we could first say is that the individual is the ultimate minority, right? We're constantly talking about majorities and minorities in political and economic disputes, but by definition, the ultimate minority in all social and economic systems is the individual himself. So what is within each individual? Well, each individual is actually a community of themselves stretched across time. So every action you're taking, you're expressing your highest value in that moment. Whatever you're doing, you are doing at the cost of anything else you could be doing. This is the concept of opportunity cost, or the concept of expressing value. All action is expressing your highest value in any given moment. And in this sense, action is always a trade with your potential future selves. So very simply, if you decide to read, a complicated book today, you'll be a little bit smarter tomorrow, for instance. If you decide to invest instead of consume today, you could be a little bit wealthier tomorrow. If you decide to work out today, you could be a little bit more fit tomorrow. So all human action is a trade with your potential future selves. And that, in fact, this is the trading partner we engage with most, are these different potential slices of ourselves across time. So in this course of human action, all human actions express a preference toward time. And this is what the Austrian economists call time preference. And essentially, the lower your time preference, the more abstract future potential selves of both yourself and other people you are considering in your actions. So, and the higher your time preference, this is a bit counterintuitive, but the higher your time preference is, the less considerate you are of your future self and others. And the time preference is quantified, actually. So this sounds like kind of a qualitative metric, but it's actually quantifiable in the marketplace by the natural interest rate. Now, people commonly believe that the interest rate is the price of money, which is true in one way, but you can also think about it at the rate which market actors value the present relative to the future. Life, liberty, and property are related to the personal freedoms associated with your future, your present, and your past. Your future is your life. If you are murdered or killed, you lose your future, which is to say, you lose your freedom in the future. Your present is your liberty. If you are imprisoned or otherwise coerced in any way, you lose your freedom in the present. Your past is your property. If your property is violated, you lose the fruits of your past freedoms. So the first two are pretty obvious and intuitive, but I want to drill into property, because property is the basis of civilization. And it, as we'll see, it is the source of all human rights. Property in the traditional sense is the stuff we own, right? And what this is the product of is previously combined freedoms in the present and in the future. So life and liberty, we have combined those freedoms with the productive factors of nature to make stuff that we or others value. And what property actually is this relationship. It's not the thing itself, which is a little bit nuanced, but it's the relationship between the owner and the asset. So property is one's own relationship with the fruits of one's labor. And so, as we said earlier, although individual self-ownership is inalienable, you cannot trade away your willpower, your consciousness, etc. The property that you justly acquire by expressing individual self-ownership is alienable, meaning that you can't trade away your self-ownership, but you can trade away the fruits of your labor. And this is foundational to all human rights. This concept of property, right? That you can go out and combine your freedoms with the factors of nature to create something of value and trade it with other people. That's it. That is the basis of human rights. And Ayn Rand has a great quote on this that I'll read. She says, quote, "The right to life is the source of all rights, and the right to property is their only implementation. Without property rights, no other rights are possible. Since man has to sustain his life by his own effort, the man who has no right to the product of his effort has no means to sustain his life. The man who produces while others dispose of his product is a slave," unquote. So this is so important. If we're unable to accumulate the winnings or the value of our past freedoms, then individualism is restricted, right? We're fighting against this fundamental reality of individual self-ownership if property is violated in any form. And this is obvious, right? What would be the point of working if one's fruits of labors were not preservable across time? Right? There'd be no point. You'd be working to do nothing, right? To what? You get nothing from work. There's nothing to be gained. There's no incentive. So property as a concept, it enshrines both the rights to enjoy the things of value you create, but also the responsibilities to care for the things of value. Things do not take care of themselves, right? If you've built a house or you've bought a car, you have to perform maintenance on those assets to keep them in good, working, useful condition. Very obvious. So property in this sense, it's a coin, right? And there's two sides. There are the rights to enjoy the asset, but also the responsibilities to take care of the asset. And this is really important because this is the only known social concept by which humans can both benefit from their work and have an incentive to take care of the natural world, right? If you have property rights in land or anything else, you are incentivized to care for it, to exhibit good stewardship for the asset. So all of the and this is a whole rabbit hole in and unto itself, so we won't go into it, but just to touch on it, all the ecological crisis in the world, all the climate crisis, all of the pollution, there is no single government regulation that can solve any of this. There's no tax policy. There's nothing, there's no coercive measure that can be taken to solve any of that. The only way to solve it is through inviolable property rights. If everything in the world is owned by an individual that is both benefits from and is accountable for the asset that is owned, that is the incentive structure by which human beings can take care of the planet and take care of nature. Okay, so that's a really important point. We can talk about another day, but that's how big of a deal property is. And so another way to think about this dichotomy between rights and responsibilities, you may believe, or maybe it's been enacted that every human has a right to 3 hot meals per day. But the immediate question in your mind should be, instead of just thinking in terms of rights, because that sounds wonderful, right? Oh, sure, everyone should eat 3 hot meals a day. Sounds great. Ask yourself, though, who is the chef? Who is responsible for providing those 3 hot meals per day? And by asking this question, you'll come to see property in its totality as a concept. There are no rights independent of responsibilities. Everyone's right is someone else's responsibility. So if you really distill it all the way down, the sole human right is choice. And choice is an expression of individual self-ownership, freedom in the past, present, and future. So it is property that determines this delicate balance between rights and responsibilities in the world. And indeed, the only way to preserve civilization from corruption and systemic rot is through the preservation of private property rights. When we violate property rights, which we can do by inflating fiat currency, when you print money, you are stealing from people, you're violating their property rights. When you tax people at a rate that is not consensually negotiated, you are violating their private property rights. When you enforce a regulation of any kind, any rule that's being imposed and is not mutually negotiated between 2 willing parties, all of these things, inflation, taxation, regulation, are violations of private property rights and the cause of all of the disaster we're seeing in the world today: the ecological disaster, the economic disasters, and the political disasters. This idea of inviolable property, it's an ancient idea. It's been with us at least since the Magna Carta, which was enshrined in, I think, the 13th century, and it's been, philosophized about for long before that. This is the only basis of a truly sustainable and fruitful civilization. We simply cannot harmonize human action without an implementation of inviolable property. So there are no other human rights that work over time without property. Property is the basis of it all. And the basis of property, again, is just individual self-ownership, this fundamental yet simple reality. For this reason, we could say that, again, if property is a product of your past freedoms, making it resistant to violation. So the more we can accumulate the fruits of our past freedoms, the more we can improve the freedoms in our present and our future. This is what economics does. We are satisfying wants of one another more cheaply, more efficiently, with greater economization. We're becoming more wealthy through trade and innovation. And this wealth, in the form of capital accumulation and knowledge growth, this affords us greater freedom in the present and in the future. This is the way I'm talking to you right now is through this digital camera and this digital microphone. These are modern technological miracles of the marketplace that allow me to be more productive than I otherwise could, that allow you to enjoy this presentation in a way that you could not without trade and innovation. All of this is based on the resistance of property to violation. So, a civilization that is based on this truth, truly based on this truth, has been attempted many times before. In the United States, the country was founded upon this idea of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which it inherited from the Magna Carta, but it swapped out pursuit of happiness instead of property because there was slavery, frankly, in the States back then. And these have all been approximations of inviolable property, right? There have been checks and balances put in place that would restrain the government from acting in a way that was excessively coercive to the individual. But over time, because these are just principles scribbled on a constitutional or founding document, people and bureaucrats inevitably find a way to disobey the restraints they've placed, the founding fathers placed on themselves. Again, just referencing America. So what we needed to actually implement this principle of inviolable property was a technology that could not be violated, an actual property right that is independent of the state and its monopoly on violence, and one that maximizes the freedom and the sovereignty of the individual, which is the cornerstone of civilization, right? The more we maximize the freedom of the individual, the life, liberty, and property of the individual, the more robust and wealthy civilization becomes. And this idea of freedom maximalism, it's not just this ethereal ideal, let's all sing kumbaya and get along. This is a very practical, pragmatic, in fact, the only known way to produce harmonious human action and instill it within a civilization in a way that is sustainable over time, that maximizes wealth creation. So the more we can optimize for freedom and self-ownership, the more wealthy we all become. This is aggregate wealth production. And this is the most ethical and humanitarian form of civilization because it optimizes for equality of opportunity. Meaning, everyone is born owning themselves. You're born with property. The more you can intelligently expend this property and combine it with the factors of nature in a useful way and sell it into the marketplace, the more you can accumulate savings to reduce the burdens of life and save for the future. You can become more free. As property becomes less violable, human beings become more free, more ethical, more moral, lower time preference, wealthier, all of these things, everything that civilization is intended to do. This is the crux of the whole thing. So we just admit and honor the reality of individual self-ownership, then we gain all of these benefits of the free market, frankly. So what was lacking? What's been lacking throughout all of history, and why do we keep screwing this up? Well, there's a lot of reasons, but the big obvious one is that we keep monopolizing and corrupting the money, the most important property in the marketplace, the form of property, right? The relationship between an individual and an asset that holds claim to all other assets. Money can be exchanged for anything else. That's why it's the most important property in any marketplace. And, we had gold historically, which was pretty good at keeping governments in check. But in the 20th century, central banks cornered the market on gold and really just corrupted the standard, right? We've moved away from it through fractional reserve banking, ultimately fiat currency, et cetera. Fortunately, in the 21st century, we have the emergence, thanks to the hard work of Satoshi Nakamoto, of the first inviolable property in the history of humanity. And this is enshrined in the incorruptible money known as Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a purely digital informational property right. It maximizes the freedom of the individual, right? By holding Bitcoin, I hold an asset that no one can manipulate, no one can change, no counterparty can steal from me, no one can inflate, no one can change the rules. No, it is, for the first time in human history, we have a working implementation of the ancient principle of inviolable property, which itself is a reflection of individual self-ownership, which is the basis of all human rights. Again, property, property, property. It is the fundamental substrate of civilization. All property rights throughout history have depended on the monopoly on violence to be enforced before the invention of Bitcoin. That's why this is such a big deal, right? Bitcoin maximizes the freedom of the individual, and at full scale adoption would maximize the wealth creation and equality of opportunity for all market actors in the world. It would defund and minimize the coercive measures of government, right? Again, who perpetually violate property rights via inflation, taxation, and regulation. All of these things that are a net destructive to wealth and freedom in the world. So in that sense, I consider Bitcoin to be the scaffolding by which we reach higher echelons of human civilization. This is an invention as significant as the printing press was to the disruption of the medieval church. And this is not, there's nothing to talk about here, frankly. I've just said a lot of words, but this is an inarguable reality. If you try and mount a counter argument against individual self-ownership, you are expressing individual self-ownership in a self-refuting attack on the foundation of your own argument. So Bitcoin quite simply takes us back to this fundamental reality of individual self-ownership. It maximizes the options for the individual and the resistance of the individual to coercive measures by the state or anyone else. And in doing so, it gives us a basis of inviolable property on which to build a new and better civilization independent of state attack vectors. And that's why Bitcoin matters, and that's why freedom maximalism matters.
So thank you, Robert Breedlove, for explaining about property rights and human rights. The next step, we are going to invite Arthur Skabek. He is the COO of Paxful and really involved in build with Bitcoin Foundation to help people, especially in the countries such as Africa, to get their basic human rights through Bitcoin. So thank you, Arthur, for coming to this conference. Maybe first of all, can you tell a little bit more about yourself and also Build with Bitcoin Foundation?
Sure. Hi, Dea. Hey, everyone. Thanks for inviting. So I'm Arthur Shabak. I'm a co-founder CEO of Paxful, and Paxful is a peer-to-peer marketplace for people to buy and sell Bitcoin. In essence, what it allows to do any kind of cross-border payments, use Bitcoin for whatever you want, exchange value with other people. And I've been doing that for 7 years with my co-founder, Ray Youssef. So our idea was from the beginning to help the little guy. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. So yeah, maybe you can share what you guys did, what did you see so far in Africa, and what made you decide to start Build with Bitcoin Foundation?
Right. So naturally, we didn't know in the beginning that Africa will be our biggest market, but it turned out that Africans, especially the young generation, we call them the cheetahs, they're super savvy and they find ways how to overcome their day-to-day obstacles and financial issues and so on. That's why naturally they started moving to Bitcoin and crypto and discovered Paxful, because Paxful for them is financial liberation, financial inclusion, all the issues they have with their day-to-day finances, right? That's one part. And the second part is we need to give back to the community, right? And that's the initiative with the built with Bitcoin. We're not just providing them financial services as a Paxful app, but also we're giving them the clean water, we're giving them access to education. And that's what we decided. We don't want to wait until, we're going to be billionaires and then, we start doing the philanthropy back in a lot of times forward, but we're going to do it right now. So we're giving out actually 1% of all our profits back to the community through the Built with Bitcoin and the Giving Block Association. So, and it has paid off tremendously. First of all, people get to know more about Paxful through not just about as a financial platform, but also the social good we're doing. So, and it's not just the beginning. It's it is the beginning. We're just starting to see all the feedback we're getting, right? It's like we're going to be building the blockchain hubs, the education centers for people. So that's the next step we're doing. We actually opened up office in Abuja, the first blockchain center in Nigeria. People can actually go there and be educated about Bitcoin, how to use this. I'll stop right here. There's a lot I can say.
Okay. Yeah. So you mentioned a little bit about, like people in Africa, they use Paxful, they use crypto in a way to get like some kind of access to financial, like to some kind of access to better money. So what do you see like the biggest struggle for people in Africa when it comes to getting access to finance?
So the only way to find this out, if you actually go there, you listen to the people, because really me sitting here in other part of the world, I'm now in Europe, is I don't see this, I don't have the same issues as they do, and it's really hard to grasp. But because I traveled there, I've been there like a month ago in Nigeria, I visited Abuja and Lagos, and then I see the issues there. And then in other countries like Kenya, in other global south, the countries, when it comes down to especially cross-border payments. For example, you want to transfer money between Ghana and Nigeria, it's only international wire. It takes 3 business days, $35 of fees. What you can do, you can buy Bitcoin on Paxful from a Nigerian peer, and then sell that Bitcoin on Paxful to your Ghana peer, and both are local bank transfers. So it takes only 10 minutes, these 2 transactions. So that's the power of P2P, what we're doing. So, and I say this to other people, to everyone, that Paxful is like a Swiss Army knife. If you can figure out, you can connect the different dots, like, hey, here I can buy Bitcoin with this payment method, like bank transfer or like online wallet in South Africa, FNB or M-Pesa, with like 3% fee. And then here I can sell for in Indonesia for Jazz Cash for like 1% premium. Mm-hmm. My fee is only 2%, because the net fee. So, and that opens up limitless opportunities. We are kind of combining all the PSPs together through a human layer. So all the payment service providers that we're listing as payment methods, they are all connected together through the human layer, because otherwise in Africa, like these PSPs, they don't talk to each other. Only 3% out of 2,000 of them talk to each other. So again, the opportunities and what we can do, it's not just the existing market size in remittances, cross-border payment settlements. It just opens up and unlocks the wealth of people that they have, the money is kind of stuck or it's slow, it's illiquid. With crypto, you can make it liquid.
So,
exactly. So I can bring an example. Again,
Mm.
there's so many like craftsmen in Kenya, right? I have this Nigerian flag bracelet. This goes for $100 market price.
Mhm.
But again, to tap into the global market, you need to accept payments from other people, and people don't know how to do this right locally. So again, the market for them is small. But once we can enable through Paxful and through crypto, accept payments from all people all over the world, right? It opens up commerce and wealth.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. Uh, and I also would like to know about your opinion, because through Paxful and also built with Bitcoin Foundation, you just mentioned that you guys create or providing clean water, education, right, in several countries in Africa. So why do you think that Bitcoin can facilitate this better than the traditional finance?
Okay, so we actually have direct experience for the past few years actually with our built with Bitcoin Foundation, and Yusuf Nassari, he's heading that. And the story how he got into crypto was actually through us. So Ray, my co-founder, he tried to donate to his initiative Zamzam Water about providing clean water across the emerging world. The credit card payment did not go through. So Ray contacted Yusuf like, hey, I wanna pay with Bitcoin. And Yusuf was like, oh, what's that? It's I heard of Bitcoin, crypto. It's complex, it's shady, but hey, I'll do this leap of faith. So he accepted Bitcoin, and after that, a game changer. Like for his nonprofit business, he's like, hey, I can pay the suppliers easily. I can receive payments in crypto from anybody all over the world. There's so much extra, like there's so much velocity was added to his nonprofit. I'm telling you, like the speed now he's building the schools is like intense. It's like 3 to 6 months, and again, it's because paying out the suppliers is everything is much faster, easier. Of course, there's this education part, but everybody's incentivized to learn how Bitcoin and crypto works. So it has really paid off for nonprofits to accept Bitcoin or crypto. I keep making a difference between Bitcoin and crypto. For me personally, Bitcoin is about the payments, and crypto is like blockchain, all this decentralized finance stuff.
Yeah. So that's really beautiful that I guess with the current system that it's even really hard for us to help each other because of the limitation from the centralized authority, like from the various limitation of payment. But
yeah, I can bring an example if you want.
Yeah, sure.
So it's about people's creativity, right? If you get stuck, you want to do some payment, and you're used to the habit, to the system that, hey, I'm a fisherman in Sierra Leone, and every morning I go to fish, and I'm standing in bank to borrow money, and then by the end of the day, I pay back 20% interest, right? So you stand in the line for a few hours, you borrow money to buy some fishing equipment, gasoline, a boat. So then you go to the sea, you do your stuff, you sell it on the market, you pay back. So and here's the habit. It's like, okay, I can optimize my standing in line by sending my oldest son and so on. But again, it's like optimizing the existing thing. But when people know Bitcoin, they're like, hey, wait a minute, I don't have to do any of that stuff. I can do all that stuff online. And that's how the creativity comes in, right? Once the people are cut off from the system, or a better example is like they have in Nigeria, $100 limitation. A week or a month, I guess. You can pay in US dollars. If you want to buy something from outside that costs US dollars, you can buy only $100, and you can't even buy iPad or like anything. So what you can do, you buy Bitcoin locally from somebody, and then you send that Bitcoin to your friend in China who ships electronics, or whoever in some e-commerce store that accepts crypto. That's how you overcome. Yeah, and even though, and it's not like the government doesn't want you to spend, they do. It's just they didn't have enough reserves in the hard currency like dollars and euros that is not coming into the country, so they are basically limiting you just to balance it out, because they need to spend also like military equipment, medicine, and so on, right? To serve its population.
Wow, that's really show how powerful things like Bitcoin it is. And also what I see is that a lot of people use Bitcoin not only just for transaction, but also to save, right? To keep the current the money that they earn into something that is increase in value. And what Robert Breedlove mentioned in previous presentation, he said that one of the things, the most important things, the basic thing of human rights is property rights. And the problem is right now, we cannot really own our hard-earned money because the money is keep inflating, and then it lose the value, and then people kind of lost their past work and then also their future work. So what do you think about that? Like, what do you see in your experience? Do people really save in Bitcoin and in order to help them in the long run?
I totally agree with Robert, and it's right? It's the system we live in since 1971, when the world went to the fiat system, the fiat standard. And what you can do here, the only way is to spend your money that you earn. So it's not incentivizing to save, right? I'm just saying how it is, right? If you just start thinking how the system is designed, so you just have to either either spend or save into some appreciating value like stocks and so on. But again, not everybody has access to buy this kind of things. Again, like some blue chip stocks and so on. So now another option is to save in Bitcoin or other crypto, even though I personally don't recommend other crypto. Start with Bitcoin and probably don't have to try anything else. Why? Because it's the hardest money in the universe that cannot be inflated by anybody. That's why there's a guarantee. There's a 21 million Bitcoin ever. So this is the hardest money. And then if you want to, then another thing is don't spend it. Borrow against it, whatever you can afford. That's what I do. And then, the interest rate is small for the fiat. It's like 3-4%. And then, you just pay your principal every year. And because Bitcoin has been increasing on average 200% a year, your collateral is always increasing in value, so you will not get liquidated. So this is kind of deep, but once you start thinking about this, you never have to sell your Bitcoin. You can just borrow against it.
And what I see is that because of the current fiat money right now, it makes even like low income people cannot save their money because it become worthless. But Bitcoin is accessible for everyone, no matter what kind of social classes are you from. Like you can get access to Bitcoin, you can start saving in Bitcoin, you can transact in Bitcoin.
Exactly. So exactly, like anybody can access Bitcoin, and that's the awesome part of this financial inclusion. It is a basic human right to have Bitcoin, and then whatever you can do is it's up to your imagination. Obviously, do not try to lose your first earned Bitcoin in scams. If there are a lot of them, and they can promise you like 2-5x returns, that's BS. It's not going to happen, right? So, and that comes down to the choice, and then that it's yours. If you own it, it cannot be inflated and it cannot be confiscated when some countries wanted to bail out somebody, right, through customer deposits, for example. That can happen anywhere. So
yeah, exactly. And you suddenly lost all of your hard-earned money. You like you said,
yeah.
You're probably going to lose your basic human right when the money has become inflated, just like how it is in the country that gone through hyperinflation, such as Weimar Republic, or even Indonesia back in the 1998 when we reached also hyperinflation. It's become really hard to get basic needs like food, like shelter, like clothing. So this is why I think that Bitcoin is really important, and it's really um, connected to basic human rights. Having hard money can help you to sustain your human rights.
Exactly. And look, and Bitcoin is kind of conservative in its development, right? Compared to like other crypto that are being developed right now. But it's for the reason because it's the most trusted, has the most market cap, has never been hacked, and it's been up, is always up 24/7. And El Salvador is actually showing the way with the Lightning Network Layer 2 solution on top of Bitcoin, how merchants can transact with each other. And I'm just imagining myself right now, if some countries that have a hyperinflation, they would have issues with their payment system, with their currency. But Bitcoin is there and Lightning Network in parallel. It's still running, right? There's still 21 million Bitcoin. It still has, its value. It's a little bit speculating, but not much. It's still like the country's merchants, people can switch to that, no problem. And I do see it's going to be happening with more and more countries.
That's, yeah, I totally agree what you just said. And as a closing statement, what is your message or takeaways for Indonesian people? And to give a context, that Indonesia is the fourth largest country by population, and almost 60 to 70% of the population own smartphones.
Right.
So, but there's like 60% as well is unbanked. So there, because we are archipelago country, there's a lot of islands. It's not very easy to spread finance system right now in Indonesia. So maybe Arthur, you can give some kind of a closing statement.
Sure, there's a lot of thoughts I have, and again, it's with my experience with other countries, what I've been to and seen, and how they're changing. So definitely Indonesia is changing for the better as well. Beautiful country. I've been myself in Bali. Hopefully be back soon as well. So again, it's about education, because again, the first thing is people are afraid. What is Bitcoin? First of all, we need to realize what are the problems people have in Indonesia with their money. Is it remittance? Is it wealth preservation? Is it international payments? Is it e-commerce? Is it just speculation on different cryptocurrencies, right? So once we know what are these main things, we can start using that. We can start, for example, promoting crypto startups like Paxful, like, hey, use Paxful to receive money with Jash Cash. For example, we are doing more than $1 million volume on our peer-to-peer marketplace in Indonesia alone. And most of it is bank transfer, right? Somebody has a Bitcoin in some other country and wants to pay an Indonesian person, merchant, whoever, instead of doing the wire transfer, he just sends him Bitcoin, and that person in Indonesia is cashing out Bitcoin to his local money into Indonesian rupees. That's beautiful. So it will take time, but we just have to show the examples, how it's done. We need to come all together to just show to the people like, hey, it's a better system and so on. Yes, there are people's habits and all that stuff, but hey, it takes time and patience. But once we show to 1-2 people, just start spreading around. That's what we need to do.
Yeah, start small, start slowly. Yeah, and that's really good. Like, just to start, and education is really number one. That's why we are doing this conference, to help people to speed up their education and learn from each other. So yeah, thank you so much, Arthur, for your thoughts, for your stories, and good luck with Paxful, and good luck with Build with Bitcoin. and hopefully we can see each other maybe in the next Bitcoin conference.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you.